You won't believe the Apostle Paul's shocking transformation at 3 a.m., a tale of redemption. In the dead of night, when the world is draped in silence, a figure emerged like a ghost against the backdrop of the moonlit road. It was Saul, a man consumed by rage and conviction, his heart a tightly wound spring of fury. Yet on this fateful night, as the clock inched closer to 3 a.m., something extraordinary was about to unfold. Thunder rumbled in the distance, sending chills down the spines of those brave enough to wander the darkened streets. It was a moment where fear danced on the edge of anticipation. Suddenly, a blinding light flooded the narrow path, as if the heavens had cracked open to reveal a divine presence. Saul fell to the ground, heart pounding like a drum in his chest, almost drowning out the deafening voice that echoed around him. "Saul, why are you persecuting me?" The question hung heavy in the air, sending ripples of uncertainty through his very soul. Eye-watering brightness, shrouded in a hum that felt electric, swirled around him as if unraveling the very fabric of reality. Who was this voice? A figment of his fevered imagination or an encounter with the divine? As he lay there, confusion wrapping around him like a suffocating blanket, the night sky filled with whispers. The townsfolk roused from their slumber, peering into the darkness, eyes wide with curiosity and fear. "Did you see that? That light, it's like nothing I've ever seen," murmured a nearby villager, his voice trembling. Others gawked in disbelief, their breath hitching as they clutched their heart. This was not just a man. This was a spectacle that would ripple through the ages. How could a man so staunch in his beliefs suddenly be brought to his knees? Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air thickened as the questioning voice shot through Saul's mind. "Who are you, Lord?" A simple question that carried the weight of the universe. The brilliance around him intensified, swallowing him whole, and in that blinding moment, his world flipped upside down. Would he remain chained to his past, or could there be a chance for redemption? And as the villagers whispered among themselves, the world teetered on the verge of transformation. What would happen next? Would Saul rise from the ashes of his former self? The night held its breath, ready to reveal the next act in this unfolding mystery. The light loomed larger, almost as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Saul's body trembled against the cold ground, the icy night seeping into his bones. "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting." The words hammered into his consciousness, vibrating through his core, blasting away the walls of certainty he had built around his life. In that instant, Saul went from conviction to chaos. The villagers stood frozen, mouths agape. Some crossed themselves. Others fled as if the very ground beneath them were shaking from the power of the moment. "Is it a curse or a blessing?" one elder whispered, his brow knit with confusion. Between fear and awe, uncertainty hung heavily in the air, wrapping around them like fog, stifling coherent thought that Saul's mind raced. This voice, this overwhelming presence, could it be? Years of zealotry, years of conviction that led him to hunt down Christians, all flashed before his eyes. The families torn apart, the silent screams of those he condemned, echoed like haunting memories. Guilt clawed at him, a physical force squeezing his heart. He was not just a persecutor, he was a murderer. Darkness closed in. Black thoughts spiraled like a vortex around him, threatening to pull him under. How could I have been so blind? What have I done? Panic clutched his throat. Tears unwelcome and shameful sprang forth. In the grip of this visceral fear, he realized he had lost everything he thought he stood for. The ground felt unsteady beneath him. "Lord," he gasped, "what do you want me to do?" The silence that followed was deafening. An electric anticipation charged the atmosphere, leaving the villagers quivering. What was to come? A punishment? A rebuke? "Get up," the voice thundered, yet it was laced with an unexpected softness, as if the Almighty held compassion for this hapless wretch. "Go into the city, and you will be told what you are to do." Saul opened his eyes, squinting against the dazzle that surrounded him. A moment later, that radiant light dimmed, leaving him in an unsettling twilight. He staggered to his feet, his body weak, like a newborn foal. The villagers watched, breaths held, as his gaze fell to the path ahead. But something was wrong. Where once he boasted of clear sight, darkness had swallowed his vision. Blindness. He felt a new layer of despair covering him, heavier than the cloak of anger he had wrapped himself in for so long. How could he navigate this new life when he couldn't even see? Panic spread through the crowd like wildfire. What is wrong with him? A woman gasped, her fingers trembling against her lips. He has lost his sight. The murmurs escalated. Some expressed fear, while others wondered if this was just the beginning. A transformation so shocking, it could turn this night into legend. Saul reached out, grasping at straws, yet only finding emptiness. "Take me someone, please." His vulnerability rang out, and for the first time, it was not accompanied by scorn or hatred, but by a desperate plead. As hands pulled him away from the haunting light, whispers of the crowd began to swirl once more. Who could change a man so deeply? When they reached the city, the sky began to gray. The dawn was near, but what it would bring remained a mystery. The transformative night had only begun, and Saul's journey was just igniting. Little did he know, darker forces were watching from the shadows, eager to take advantage of his fracture. As the first light of day crested the horizon, a new battle loomed ahead, one not just for his life, but for his very soul. What awaited him in the city? Would there be supporters or foes? The answers ignited a tension that crackled in the air. The city loomed ahead, a mass of darkness and uncertain shapes, swallowed by early morning shadows. Saul stumbled along the cobbled streets, each step a reminder of his newfound blindness. People brushed past him, their murmurs a blend of curiosity and fear. He could feel the weight of their gazes piercing him, like daggers that chiseled away at his sanity. What is going to happen to him? A voice whispered, barely audible. "I'd sooner spit on a cursed man than look at that monster." Another hissed in disgust. Saul's heart pounded in his chest, a war drum summoning all his doubts. Bitter thoughts clawed at him. He was the scourge of these people. He had hunted them down without mercy, and yet here he was, a wretched shell of the man he once claimed to be. "Lord," he whispered under his breath, "what have you done?" The world blurred around him. He could almost feel the ground shifting under his feet, warping beneath the weight of his sins. He remembered the faces of the believers he had condemned, families torn apart, children left fatherless. Each memory was a dagger that twisted deeper within him, each guiltier than the last. Suddenly, a gentle touch broke through his spiraling thoughts. A hand clasped his shoulder. "Don't be afraid," a soft voice said. "A woman. You're safe with us." Saul turned his head toward the sound, focusing as best he could. Safe? Who would offer safety to a murderer? His voice cracked, breaking under the pressure of his emotions. "We've seen your pain, Saul," she said. "Some of us have heard the stories. You have been chosen for a purpose." Chosen? The word rolled off his tongue like bitter ash. Chosen for what? To suffer? To be denied redemption? That hand on his shoulder tightened. To seek the truth, Saul. The truth in the darkness. "Follow me." As she led him deeper into the city, the sounds grew sharper. The clamor of waking merchants, the smell of fresh bread mingling with the lingering scents of yesterday's fish market. Life swirled around him, vibrant and intoxicating, yet Saul felt none of it. He was adrift in a storm of despair. One wrong turn would send him spiraling back into the depths he thought he had escaped. They reached a small house with weathered walls wrapped in ivy. Inside, eyes filled with concern met him. They looked at him as though they could see through the fog of his past to a potential future, even if Saul couldn't see it. "Here, sit down," a man commanded gently, pulling out a chair for him. "You'll need to regain your strength." With uncertainty flooding his veins, Saul sank into the chair. Shadows danced around him, but he sensed camaraderie weaving through the air. Yet in the back of his mind, fear twisted like a serpent. Would they rally around him, or would they cast him out like a rotten fruit? Moments passed while whispers flew between the gathered crowd. Saul wished he could hear their thoughts. What do they think of me? He wondered, feeling like a ghost among the living. "Saul?" The woman who led him spoke again. "You were shown the light to learn, To change, we want to help you. Help. The idea felt foreign yet enticing. But could he truly grasp this chance? What if their offer was another trick, leading him further into darkness? Saul's breath came quick, and he leaned forward, anxiety clawing at him. What if I can't change? What if I'm too far gone? A weighty silence followed his desperate question. No one spoke, yet the implication hung heavily in the air, an unvoiced fear echoing in the hollow of their hearts. Just then, a loud thud resonated from outside, slicing through the silence. What was that? Saul exclaimed, instantly alert. Panic surged through the group. The atmosphere shifted, tension rising as eyes darted toward the door. What new threat lurked beyond their sanctuary? Outside, in the dim light of dawn, forces were preparing to test Saul's fragile resolve. As the door creaked open, a figure silhouetted against the light stepped into the room, eyes brimming with ominous intent. You have something that belongs to us, Saul, the figure declared, the voice cold as steel. The weight of impending danger clung to Saul like smoke, thick and suffocating. Would he stand firm in this moment of reckoning? What dark truth had he unwittingly awakened? The figure loomed larger, a presence that demanded attention. Saul could almost feel the cold radiating off him like a distant, unforgiving storm. His heart raced, and the familiar pang of fear gripped his chest, tightening until he could barely breathe. Who are you? Saul managed, striving to keep his voice steady, but it trembled like fragile glass. The man stepped closer, and Saul could hear the scuff of his boots against the wooden floorboards. Names matter little in a place like this. He paused, letting the words linger in the air like a fog. What matters is that you have awakened forces far beyond your understanding. Saul strained to see the figure, but despite his blindness, he sensed a dark aura, a weight that pressed against him, as if something wicked had entered the room. He felt the eyes of the gathered people shift toward him, unspoken judgments laced with fearful glances. Enough of this. The woman who had guided him yelled, her frustration breaking the tense atmosphere. You've no authority here. We offer Saul refuge. Refuge? The man scoffed. You think that's enough to hide from the truth? To hide from what you've unleashed? Saul clenched his fists, struggling to comprehend. What am I supposed to have unleashed? I don't even know what is happening. I'm just a blind man. The figure stepped further into the room, the shadows seemingly bending around him. You are more than a blind man, Saul. You are a vessel, an unwitting catalyst. Catalyst? He echoed, his voice raw with confusion. For what? Destruction, the man replied, his voice a low growl. And potential. Both sit heavy on your shoulders. Saul's chest tightened. An explosion of anger and despair surged through him. I haven't asked for any of this. I didn't ask to be transformed into this. He gestured around at the voices and faces, the very crowd who once feared him. Whatever this is, your denial won't shield you. The man leaned in closer. Your past will always catch up. It's only a matter of time. And time is running out. The group went still, a collective breath held, as if they awaited a verdict. If it's my past you seek, Saul said, his voice rising with defiance, panic feeding courage, then come for me. But I won't sit idly by while you threaten these people. Brave words from a man whose past is steeped in cowardice. The figure shot back. You were chosen, Saul. Destiny marked you more than your choices ever could. What do you mean chosen? But his question hung in the air, unanswered. Outside, sounds of chaos grew louder, shouts clashing with the distant clang of metal. Unruly footsteps approached the house, echoing like a war drum signaling doom. Do you hear that? A voice broke through the tension, a man in the back, tremors of fear quaking his tone. Leavi, come for us. Enough games, the figure snapped, frustration crawling into his voice. Saul, if you truly wish to understand your purpose, step forward. But if you do, know it comes with a price. Saul felt his heart thundering in his chest. What price must he pay? Anxiety twisted in his stomach, a coil of uncertainty. Choose wisely, Saul, the figure urged, his presence seeping into the room like poison. The moment you decide may seal your fate and theirs. Saul felt the ground beneath him tremble, an unsettling foreshadowing that sent shivers down his spine. What was the price he'd have to pay? And in that breathless moment, he couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something monstrous was rising, waiting just outside the fragile walls of their sanctuary, Could he truly confront whatever darkness loomed for him, and not just for himself, but for those who stood next to him? A pulse of uncertainty thumped in the background of his mind. Would he have to make a choice that could leave both him and the people he barely knew utterly exposed? As thunder rumbled outside, a chilling realization swept over Saul. Sometimes destiny demands a sacrifice, and he stood on the precipice of that very choice. What was lurking in the shadows of his past, ready to strike? The noise outside swelled, an angry mob clamoring against the doors. Saul felt the vibrations ripple through the wooden structure. Every shout, every crash was a heartbeat, reverberating in his chest. Saul. The woman's voice pierced through the chaos. He turned toward her, the sound pulling him back from the brink of his swirling dread. You need to make a choice. The figure stood unwavering, cold eyes locked onto Saul, as if he were a puzzle waiting to be solved. This is it, the man growled. Your moment of reckoning. But what will it be? Step forward and claim your power, or do you stand back and let them decide your fate? What power? His mind raced through the possibilities like claws raking at his thoughts. Did he even have any power? He was just Saul, blind and broken. How could he possibly stand against whatever dark entity threatened them? Saul, choose. The urgency in her voice tugged at him, grounding him amidst the chaos. Why this pressure? Saul shot back, frustration spilling out. Why should I lead the charge when I can barely keep my hands steady? The figure before him leaned in, his breath like frost on Saul's face. You fear the unknown when you should embrace it. It's time to stop hiding behind your blindness. Something about those words stung. They rattled deep, jostling memories he'd locked away. The darkness in his past, the pain and cowardice he had tried to forget. Could he really face it again? As if to answer his silent question, a loud crash echoed from outside, drowning out the sounds of the man's taunts. A splintering of wood mixed with the anguished cries of the group. They were coming for them. They storming like a pack of wolves. One voice piped up, panic dripping from every syllable. How long before they find you? The dark figure said softly. And then what if they find out about your past? You cannot hide. This is the final stand. Choose or be consumed. Saul gritted his teeth, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Could he put himself on the line? Could he even protect them if he stepped forward? It's your call, the woman urged. We believe in you, Saul. You have to believe in yourself. He took a breath, steadying himself. His chest tightened with each pulse of fear and doubt, yet a flicker of something else sparked within him, a thread of defiance. Could he become what they all needed? Outside, the thud of bodies grew louder, the shouting an almost funeral dirge. The sound of splintering would promise that their sanctuary was on borrowed time. Enough, Saul roared, heart pounding. If I'm to lead, then I'll not lead alone. The revelation hit him like a forceful wave. As the crowd rose in anticipation, he felt the weight of the dark figure's gaze shift. Stand with me, he called to them, reaching for their strength. Whatever comes, we face it together. A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. Though fear clawed at their resolve, hope danced in their eyes. But he could feel the figure's sneer deep inside, a lingering doubt that this was merely a fleeting bravado. Very well, the man hissed. But be prepared, the path you choose could unleash forces that none can contain. With that, Saul turned away from the looming darkness. Outside, the door buckled under the onslaught. He could hear their breath, feel their presence like a storm close behind, sharp and deadly. Everyone, Saul shouted, ready yourselves. We are not victims anymore. As he sought strength in their shared fear, he felt the air shift. Reality warped around him, shadows lengthening unnaturally. Then, without warning, something heavy crashed through the door, uprooting the fabric of his resolve. What awaited them on the other side could change everything, and Saul was on the brink of unleashing a darkness more terrifying than he ever imagined. What would happen when he faced it head-on? The door exploded inward, slamming against the wall with a deafening roar. Splinters flew like shrapnel, and dust motes danced in the chaos of the suddenly wider opening. The mob, an undulating mass of fury and desperation, surged into the room. Faces twisted in rage and fear, they filled the threshold, illuminated for a moment by the dim light flickering above. Saul's heart raced like a trapped animal. It was no longer just a vision of danger, now it was real, visceral. He could feel the heat from their bodies, smell the sweat, and desperation mingling in the air. Panic clawed at his throat, threatening to choke him. "Brace yourselves," Saul shouted, every ounce of authority he could muster pouring out. The group around him stumbled to form a line. They clutched improvised weapons, broken furniture legs, a rusted pipe. Some clung to one another, eyes wide with terror, but flickering with a shard of hope. He could feel it. They believed in him. But belief meant nothing if he faltered. "Saul," the woman cried again, her voice a tether within the storm. "Remember your choice." As the first member of the mob lunged forward, a guttural growl ripping from their throat, Saul stepped into the fray without thinking, instinct taking over. He swung his makeshift weapon, a heavy bookend. They made contact with flesh, a sickening crack echoing through the suddenly silent room. The crowd hesitated, eyes wide with shock. The figure at the door turned, his piercing gaze narrowing. "Is this what you wanted?" He laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "This is your power?" "Violence." Saul's hands shook as he assessed the scene, breathing heavily. They were no longer just faceless intruders. They were terrified, desperate people. But they were also a threat, razor-edged anger flaring in their eyes. Every instinct urged him to defend his own, to fight tooth and nail, but he knew that wouldn't win the war. "Stop," Saul shouted, raising a hand. "We don't have to do this. There has been enough pain." The crowd surged forward again, but something shifted in Saul. That flicker of defiance ignited into a roaring blaze. He could feel a swelling of force within him, a current flowing, connecting him not only with the group behind him, but with the very essence of their shared struggle. He took a step forward and allowed that feeling to wash over him. "We are all suffering here. We can overcome this, together." The crowd paused, confusion etched on their faces. For a heartbeat, the chaos stilled. The tension was thick, tangible, as Saul locked gazes with the largest figure in the front, a woman whose eyes brimmed with unshed tears. "Why are we fighting each other?" she pleaded, voice trembling. "This isn't what we wanted." Saul felt that thread pull tight, a connection to something greater. "You've lost so much, just like us. We can find our way back. Join us instead of tearing each other apart." He watched as doubt flickered through their ranks. Some stepped back, hesitant to cross the threshold of violence. Yet the dark figure lurking just behind them sneered, urging on their aggression. "Fools," he hissed. "You'll never come together. A house divided will fall. It's only a matter of time." But the woman, her gaze softening, echoed his words. "We can't let them win. Not like this." The uprising stilled further, yet Saul couldn't shake the sensation that the dark figure had more to unleash. It was a trap. He could feel it crawling along his skin, an unsettling foreshadowing. In the eye of the storm, as they all waited with bated breath, the shadows at the edges of the room converged, darker and heavier, swirling with intent. And then came the whisper, so soft, yet carrying the weight of the dark figure's promise. "Very well," it teased, "if you wish to stand united, let us see how easily you fracture when the true horror is unleashed." Saul's gut tightened. What had they awakened? As he braced himself, a chilling thought brushed his mind. What if the worst was yet to come? And around him, the atmosphere shifted, something very ancient and cruel stirred in response. Would Saul's fragile alliance hold? Or was this just the beginning of their ruin? The atmosphere thickened, oppressive and dark. Shadows pooled around the edges like black ink spilling across a page. Saul stood at the center, adrenaline coursing through his veins, but uncertainty gnawed at him. The uneasy alliance between him and the mob teetered on a razor's edge. "Stay together," he urged, though his voice felt small against the brewing chaos. The woman's eyes met his, her determination wavering but visible. He could sense her inner struggle, fear and longing intermingling as one. Then it came, an echoing, guttural roar, a sound that crawled beneath their skin. The pitch of it sent shivers through the assembled group. The dark figure grinned, a predator surveying its quarry. "Do you hear that? The darkness has teeth, and it craves a feast." Saul clenched his jaw. "We want to be that feast." His voice boomed, louder this time, infused with an undercurrent of desperation as the crowd tightened around him, a thin line of hope against an encroaching tide. Without warning, the first wave crashed forward. The crowd surged with a primal energy, faces distorted in anticipation, their weapons raised. But it wasn't just rage stewing in their chests. It was despair, twisted and sharp. The shadows pulsed, and in a horrifying crescendo, a figure emerged cloaked in darkness, its features obscured. A tenacious swirl of black and red surrounded it, as if fashioning a cloak from nightmares. It raised a skeletal hand, and a chill seeped into the air, coiling around them. Saul could see the woman beside him tremble. "What is that?" Her voice was barely a whisper, shaking like dry leaves caught in a storm. "It's the consequence of our division," he said, though he struggled to keep his composure. "Fear has always carried a price." The figure stepped closer, and with each footfall, shadows writhed like serpents. It breached their fragile truce with sinister delight, its voice dripping with malice. How quaint unity in the face of despair. "Shall I show you what you're truly made of?" In that moment, thunder crashed from somewhere unseen, rattling the room and sending dust motes spiraling through the utter darkness. "Step back," Saul barked, pushing forward to shield the woman. "We want to stand down." But the mob hesitated. Confusion and terror tangled in their eyes as the figure unleashed a shriek that reverberated through the very marrow of their bones. "Together you may be courageous," it spat, "but alone, you are nothing." The shadows lunged, darting back to envelop members of the crowd, their faces twisting in agony as the essence of fear seeped into them. Saul's heart raced as he watched, paralyzed, as camaraderie began to fray amidst the horror. "No," he shouted, louder now, rallying the remaining spirits. "You are stronger than it thinks. We've built this bond through shared struggles. Don't give in." The words rallied some, flickers of resolve igniting in their eyes like tiny lanterns in the darkness. But the shadows coiled tighter, hungry for despair. In the chaos, Saul's instincts kicked in. With a surge of resolve, he reached for that ancient energy, channeling it from the depths of fear itself into a blinding light amidst the gathering gloom. The air vibrated with unseen energy as he called upon them. "Fight it. Remember what we stand for." But even as beams of hope radiated from him, the dark figure only laughed, low and malevolent. "Do you really believe you can fight this darkness? It knows your doubts, your regrets, all the pain you carry." Saul's vision blurred, a visceral wave of nausea crashing down. He stumbled but kept his feet, igniting something fierce within. "Then let it come." And in that moment, amidst the chaos and screaming shadows, a spark ignited, red-hot and alive, creating an unbroken tether between him and those who remained. As the milky veil of darkness began to shimmer, a sensation deep down whispered this was only just beginning. Just as Saul felt the tide shift, a piercing scream shattered through the room. Someone had been taken. "Stay close," he managed to shout, his voice drowning in panic. But it didn't matter. They were losing ground, and he could feel fear racing through the crowd. The question loomed large in the air, echoing like thunder. Could they withstand the darkness that fed on their torment? And what deeper horrors lay in wait? The shadows writhed like angry serpents, hungry and relentless. Each gasp from the crowd ignited panic, transforming their fear into something tangible, like a palpable fog creeping into their hearts. Eyes wide, they scanned the darkness, searching for the source of that haunting scream. "Who was taken?" A voice cried out, trembling. Saul felt it grip him like a vice. The unknown echoed all around them, a resonance of dread that felt like a knife twisting in his gut. In the chaos, he focused on the woman next to him. "We need to re-establish our unity," he yelled over the rising tide of madness. She nodded, tears glistening. But he couldn't let her fear seep into his resolve. They needed courage, not despair. "Take my hand," Saul urged, reaching for her. The movement felt heavy, as if the very air conspired against them. She grasped him, fingers trembling, and he pulled the small group closer. "Listen," Saul's voice surged above the rumbling chaos. "Fear is powerful, but so is hope. It can crush this darkness. We are not alone, we stand as one." But the shadows coiled tighter, and the vengeful figure loomed closer, its skeletal grin widening. Darkness seemed to drip from its fanged mouth. "You talk of hope. How quaint." Its voice dripped with mocking. "But can you feel the despair? Each heartbeat sends its echoes right back to me." He felt the pressure of the mob around him dull, like an electric current short-circuiting, and anxiety fluttered wildly in his chest. One by one, faces contorted into masks of agony, eyes hollowing out as shadows swallowed their spirits. "No," the woman shouted, her voice rising like a battle cry. "Don't let it win." Saul took a breath, so deep it felt like the last chance as he met her gaze. They could push against this darkness. Together. If you can hear me, listen to your heart. It beats for each of us. We all share this struggle. This darkness feeds on despair. It thrives in our isolation. The energy shifted slightly, sparks of realization igniting in their eyes despite the overwhelming grip of fear. A friend grasped another's hand. "I want to let go," they whispered fiercely, and others began to follow suit, forming a circle, an unbreakable chain of will. But the figure's laughter cut through the moment like glass shattering. "Foolish mortals. You think your bond can save you? Look around. Your hope is just an illusion." The ground quaked beneath them as shadows surged, reaching higher and closer. Saul gritted his teeth. "You're wrong. We are stronger than our pain. Do you hear me? Our past doesn't define us. We define our future." As if his words cast a spell, flames flickered in their eyes, the tether linking them glowing brighter with each heartbeat. The shadows flickered. For a fleeting moment, they seemed hesitant, as if retreating from the light. But in that moment of hope, the screeching laughter rose again from the figure's sudden, sharp. "Very well, let us turn this up a notch." With a hiss, the darkness surged forward again, this time lashing out like a predator lunging for its prey. Saul braced himself, but this time the crowd didn't falter. Hands clasped together, bodies pressed close, they stood firm as the shadows clawed violently against their newfound bond. The serpent of shadows lashed out, striking one of their own. "No," Saul cried, but the world seemed to slow. Time stretched, and horror painted the scene around him. A figure crumpling, swallowed by darkness. Families torn apart, friends lost in the fray. The dark figure cooed delightfully, savoring the chaos, feeding on their anguish. "All that you've worked for gone," Saul screamed, shaking against the collective terror. "Fight back. Don't let it take anyone else. Fight. You are not alone." A sudden pulse surged through the crowd as they collectively shouted a declaration of defiance, a melody of voices blending into one. But just as the tide began to turn, a piercing flash of red sliced through the darkness, revealing something terrible beyond the shadows. Saul's heart dropped. What was that? The darkness seemed to tremble in response. The question hung heavy and raw in the air. Was this merely the beginning of something greater, or a ruse to fatten the shadows on their resolve? Together, they braced for the storm of darkness, but a deeper terror slipped through, as unpredictable as the shadows themselves. What else lurked beyond that red glow? Would they find strength in their unity, or would they fall before the darkness? The crowd held their breath, teetering on the edge, waiting for Saul's next order. Time stretched thin as the figure closed in, and a chance flicker of movement came from the shadows, a truth so unfathomable, it left them all breathless. What secret did the darkness hide? Would breaking the silence reveal a terrifying revelation? The ground trembled violently, echoing the chaos that had erupted just moments before. The shadows pulsed, dark tendrils creeping ever closer, lashing out like hungry beasts. Saul could feel the cold breath of despair brush against his skin. "What is happening?" the woman beside him murmured, fear evident in her wide eyes. The energy in the air thickened, sizzling like static. "I don't know," Saul replied, barely managing to keep his voice steady. Most of the crowd was caught in the throes of terror. Others remained firm, still holding on to hope. "Stay together. Keep your grip. We stand as one." But the malevolent laughter rang through the night again. "Your words are just a flimsy veil," the shadow figure taunted. "What would you think if you saw your own deepest fears? Would they still be painted as hope?" Saul clenched his fists, every fiber of his being unwilling to submit to this darkness. But a chilling vision crept into his mind. Each face in the crowd distorted, darkened, their hope extinguished. His own reflection joining the horror. But then came the flash of red again, burning against the shadow, sharp and searing. For a moment, it illuminated something powerful, a figure moving deeper within the darkness. It was fleeting, but profound, a stark contrast to the chaos surrounding them. What could it be? "Can you see that?" he urged, trying to awaken the crowd from their stupor. "There is something there. We have to fight." A flicker of light sparked among the shadows as the crowd strained to peer into the darkness. Another wave of red surged forward, and a collective gasp ran through the group. Saul stepped forward, and the shadows recoiled as if repelled by an unseen force. "Together," he shouted. "Together we can face whatever lurks in that darkness." Their clutches tightened, adrenaline surging through their veins. The red light pulsed again, a heartbeat amidst the chaos, strong, steady, calling to them. "Do you feel that?" A voice chimed from the group. "It's warmth." "Yes," Saul said, the spark of their unity igniting fires within his chest. "That warmth comes from us. It's our courage. It's our hope." The darkness hissed in anger, lashing out with renewed ferocity. Saul barely avoided the sharp edge of darkness that slashed past him, grazing his arm. Pain shot through him, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the flickering light ahead. As the figure became clearer, it molded into a more defined shape, emerging with undeniable clarity. It wasn't just a flicker. It embodied strength and resolve, radiating a luminescence that pushed back the biting cold of the shadows. "Hold on," Saul called out as he felt a rush of energy, a jolt of relentless hope coursing through him. Then it happened. A deafening roar erupted, displacing the whispers of fear, merging with the burgeoning light. "Let go of your suffering. Step into your truth." The crowd roared, voices washing over the darkness with fierce fervor. They surged forth, a tidal wave of resilience, hearts beating in perfect harmony. The darkness flickered, hesitating as its grip began to weaken. But then the figure stepped closer, a shadow of something or someone intimately familiar. Saul's heart stuttered. Could it be? Had someone been lost and now returned? Anxiety clawed at him as each confrontation with familiarity sent waves of hope intertwining with uncertainty. "Face it," that figure shouted, the voice ricocheting in Saul's mind. "Face your fears, or let them consume you." The realization struck like lightning. This was more than just a battle against the shadows. They were confronting their own truths, their own pasts. Who could that figure truly be? As the spotlight illuminating that spectral warmth intensified, horrified realization and hope twisted together in his gut. What awaited them on the other side of this confrontation? "Don't back down," Saul urged. "Push forward." Yet as the figure neared, the air grew thick, a charge crackling with tension. Would they reach the truth? Or would the revelation reveal something too unimaginable to bear? The answer hung in the air, fraught with uncertainty. What lay ahead? Only the next breath could tell. The darkness surged, and the shadows lashed at them like wild serpents, but Saul felt a newfound clarity amid the chaos. He could sense the struggle within each of his companions. They were united in fear, yet tethered by something greater, an energy that pulsed between them, thrumming like a heartbeat. It was as if they had ignited a flame from the very depths of their shared pain. The figure cloaked in shadows hovered before them, taunting. "Can you truly face what you fear?" Saul's resolve solidified with the breath of hope feeding him. "Yes," he shouted. "We choose not just to endure, but to confront, to rise united." The crowd echoed his fervor, voices rising together like a tidal wave, drowning out the darkness. With each pulse of energy that rippled through their hands, Saul could feel the encroaching shadows ebb just a fraction more. He peered through the murk, trying to catch a glimpse of the figure separated from the darkness. The edges of it shimmered, flickering with hints of familiarity. The shadows hissed around them, scrambling to maintain their grip. Saul locked eyes with the flickering light. "We won't let fear decide our fate." That moment crystallized in time, and he reached deeper within, pulling forth the myriad of experiences he had buried, a mix of guilt, anguish, and regret. He let them surface, not as weapons against him, but as badges of survival. "I've persecuted and I've been blind. But here, I can see clearly. Here, we can defeat this darkness together." Suddenly, with alarming force, the red figure stepped into full view, a man whose visage was starkly illuminated against the backdrop of shadows. As he emerged into the light, the crowd gasped, recognizing the face that had once been a distant memory. "It cannot be Saul," the luminescent figure said softly, yet with words that broke through the overwhelming noise. "Remember, you are not alone. We have all borne our wounds. Only by facing them can we reclaim our lives." In that instant, The scars of his past transformed into a tapestry of resilience, a reminder that despite the pain, he had a path forward. Raw emotion washed over him as he stepped towards the light. You are here. We can fight. The figure, who now resembled a past version of himself, haunted but triumphant, nodded. Together, the shadows screeched, recoiling in horror as the swell of strength built. The crowd hummed softly, breath hitching between fear and courage, grasping the transformative energy flowing through them like a river breaking free from its dam. Raise your hands, Saul yelled. Join the light. They reached outward, fingers entwined, uniting their hearts. Saul felt their spirits converge into one, shrouded in the brilliant glow of acceptance and determination. The figure stood astride them, illuminating the way forward, a beacon of hope leading them into battle. As those surrounding him raised their arms, vibrant, dazzling light erupted from their combined energy. It lashed against the shadows, flickering as the darkness strained against their collective strength. Saul's heart pumped hard, every beat echoing the mantra he had long suppressed: he was not alone. Shattering through the oppressive gloom, a voice rose from the shadowy figure in contempt. You think your unity can save you? The past will always haunt you. But in the face of their shared identities, their failures, and their triumphs, the group surged forward, a wall of resolute light breaking the chains of despair. No more, Saul screamed, the weight of his past fueling his voice, threading through the crowd's resolution. We will not be defined by what we've done or lost. Light exploded, lancing through the shadows, dispelling the tendrils that gripped the room until the darkness around them shrieked and broke apart like glass, fragments scattering into the ether. Their collective power surged, overwhelming the sinister figure, forcing it deeper into the void from which it had emerged. Saul stood grounded, breathing deep, the scars of the past no longer haunting him, but guiding him. They were reminders of survival, of transformation. With new resolve etched in their hearts, they had not just survived the chaos. They had reclaimed their purpose. As the darkness receded, the air filled with warmth and clarity. The charged atmosphere melted into a serene calm. A sense of exuberance swept through the crowd. We've done it, the woman cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. We've conquered our fears. And just like that, they were free. The shackles of regret, pain, and despair slipped from their shoulders. Saul gazed out at the faces around him, once filled with uncertainty, now beaming with hope. I am no longer Saul the persecutor, he declared, voice strong. I am Saul the transformed. And with that, they stepped into the dawn light, hearts ablaze, brimming with the knowledge that together they could overcome anything. With newfound purpose, they faced the future, acknowledging their past but not letting it dictate their journey. As they walked into the sunrise, the world unfurled before them, raw, real, and full of possibilities. This was not just a victory, it was their rebirth, and together they would shape the life they wanted. Now remember, before you dash off into your world, we need your support. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss the next exclusive stories that are just waiting for you. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help our family grow stronger. Flood the comments section below. Let us know your thoughts and theories about this epic conclusion. You are a crucial part of this journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this incredible transformation. Your support means everything. Thank you for being on this adventure with us.